One Piece's clear insight is it knows you only can change the world when you cling too tight to your own fantasy. So the way things should be, all of the rules of the world, get broken when you have your own fantasy that you cling to despite all of that. And this is liberatory. It takes people along with you into a new version of the world itself, like a new way of experiencing reality, new ways things should be. So this huge insight of One Piece is very philosophically interesting, but it's dubious to me whether it has, a proper relation towards that or a fetishistic one in which we're doing all of this for something else, something other than getting to that change. So I want to talk about that, but first, if you don't know me, my name's Nicholas Crawford, and I wrote The Zombie Apocalypse Where We've Made It Dark, which, in terms of liberation, gets to a different version of ourselves by taking away the way things should be of the world entirely. So, realizing the zombie apocalypse to its full completion. But with One Piece, we have a character, Luffy, who is clinging to the pirate fantasy of being king of the pirates, most of all. But this fantasy of clinging to the pirates is the structuring principle of the world of One Piece itself. So, this is what defines social antagonism in the world of One Piece. So we have a world of brutal pirates and the Marines who are coming to attack the pirates, but they're all centered around this idea of being the king pirate, getting the king treasure, the One Piece itself. So, what's interesting is we have a static world where it's all just might makes right on both sides, and no one's a saint. Everyone's fighting each other brutally, but there's a saintly innocence to Luffy, who's a kid. You can see he's the pirate with the straw hat, and he's a kid who's made out of rubber. His power of being made out of rubber and being basically indestructible is the power of fantasy itself. It's you're clinging to that fantasy. Something comes and hits it, and you bounce right off. You keep going. So that's a very cartoony power of fantasy itself. Like I don't care. We're persisting anyway. So there is a unique layering here where Luffy's fantasy is everyone's fantasy of being the king pirate, but he does so in a different mode. He clings to it innocently, without brutality or brutishness, because every single pirate we run into is just a different version, a different cartoony version of the same brutishness again and again. But everyone else we run into has their own fantasy too, that they're clinging to in the exact same overly extreme, juvenile mode, where it's this is my dream and I have to chase it no matter what. So that's another aspect that makes Luffy not at all unique as well, where the crew he's assembling is a crew of misfits who all have their own extreme juvenile fantasies that they overly cling tight to. But the tough part about this over-clinging, his histrionic tightness, is it bends into fetishism. So the real difference here is sinthome and fetish. These are two psychoanalytic terms. Sinthome is just your structuring fantasy, like a hard nugget of enjoyment, kind of like whistling while you work. So it's what drives you forward, but it's impenetrable, it's indestructible, and it's very simple. It's just this acephalic. This is how I move forward. This is how I engage reality. But the fetish does so to hold off reality itself. It's a defense mechanism. So it's the thing that structures the world because you cling to it. But if it gets disrupted, your world falls apart. Whereas the sinthome, it's indestructible. You can't really alter it or traverse it. But you have to traverse the fetish. Like you have to give up the fetishistic relation, the way in which you've taken something and elevated it to the status of the thing. You're holding it too high. To the point where you need to let go of it. Cuba's the ultimate example of this, whether we're clinging to the idea of revolution as a fetish or as a sinthome. So a defense mechanism or a thing we just do. And Cuba's paying really the ultimate price right now at the hands of my country, completely unjustly, for just subtracting itself from global capitalistic economics, trying to be an island unto itself. That opting out is the only reason this country is being targeted completely unjustly by my country. But that opting out has had a cost for generations. And clinging to the cost of that, the suffering, the lack of certain basic needs, can be your fetish, can be the thing that you just cling to and elevate rather than just suffer and try not to think about, try not to reify into this example of why we're doing what we're doing. So it's that reification of the bad thing that turns it into a fetish. So with One Piece, the reifying is this idea of I'm clinging tight to my fantasy no matter what, and I'm going to talk at this level all of the time, and it makes me weird, and blah, 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 blah. So, we're entering into this space with One Piece where we get this cartoony fighting play of I'm fighting this overly strong histrionic pirate who's got their own fantasy of being the ultimate badass. And then we've got our own individual fantasies of I want to go find this legendary restaurant and work there. I want to be the world's best swordsman. Like, I want to be the world's best marine. So we're clinging to a conflicting fantasy, and then we're just clashing the characters together like they're action figures, just bam, bam, bam. And so very clearly in this staging, the repetition of the staging, it's not a drilling down. This is the one thing that bothers me about the show. It's not taking us forward. It's keeping things static in a cartoony, infinite state of play where the characters, not just Luffy with his rubberiness, but the other villains as well, are indestructible for the most part. And you keep clashing them and nothing changes. They fall apart. The clown becomes a bunch of floating object pieces himself. So there's still a lot of potential with this show. I've only watched like the first season of the Netflix show, and I've read six of the manga. So I'm not talking with complete authority here, but there's very much potential to move forward with this fantasy. But right now, very clearly, we're doing this in order to get to this cartoony play, which is forgivable to a point for kid fiction, but kid fiction can do a lot. I read kid fiction as fantasy or as philosophy as well. So this is just kind of the surprising twist that there's the huge revolutionary politics at work in One Piece, but so far it's been completely fetishistic. If you know One Piece more than me, and you know where it's going, because I'm not going to do the wiki stuff yet, tell me what you think about this staging, and does it break into new territory truly once the ship's more put together and whatnot? Because right now it seems very, very repetitive and circular with what it's doing. So it's revolutionary, but it's revolutionary in a defense mechanism. This hard thing we hold on to, it doesn't take us forward. Dune, with the fantasy of Paul Atreides in the first book of Dune, changes the world by the end of it. So you need to change the world. You need to take things forward. You need to follow that fantasy through to its end. And that's what changes our relation towards it. That's what keeps it from being this reified defense mechanism to hold off the undone ways in which the world, doesn't have any outside guarantees. But revolutionary fiction is the most important fiction to be thinking about right now, and I talk about it where I can. Let me know if there's more ahead with One Piece than this fetishistic, locked-in, static relationship that I'm describing here.